Have you ever noticed how confident human beings can be when talking about God? We speak as though we have mapped the divine, measured it, analyzed it, and reached conclusions that feel final. Yet at the same time, we admit that our knowledge is limited, our senses can deceive us, and our reasoning often fails us even in ordinary life. That tension between confidence and limitation is at the heart of one of the greatest debates in the history of philosophy. For hundreds of years, Muslim scholars have been wrestling with Greek philosophy, trying to fit Aristotle's logic into Islamic theology. Some loved it, some tolerated it, but one man said, "You know what? Aristotle got it fundamentally wrong." Al-Ghazali did not read Aristotle directly in Greek. He encountered Aristotle through Ibn Sina and Al-Farabi, who had absorbed Aristotelian philosophy and re-expressed it within an Islamic intellectual framework. After mastering their arguments, Al-Ghazali identified three positions that he believed crossed a red line. The claim that the world has always existed, rather than being created by God. The belief that God only knows general laws, not specific details. The denial of bodily resurrection, reducing the afterlife to a purely spiritual or intellectual state. And he wrote them down in his book, The Incoherence of the Philosophers. Problem number 1. The eternal world Aristotelian philosophy, as interpreted by Ibn Sina, claimed the universe has always existed. No beginning, no end. Just eternal. Al-Ghazali said, hold on. If the world is eternal, then what about creation? What about God creating the heavens and the earth? Islam teaches that God created the universe from nothing. To Al-Ghazali, this is a fundamental contradiction. Problem number 2, God doesn't know the details. According to the philosophers following Aristotle, God only knows universal principles, not specifics. He knows the concept of human, but he doesn't know that you're watching this video right now. He doesn't know the individual details of your life. Al-Ghazali was shocked. An all-knowing God who doesn't know the details? That's not the God of Islam. That's not the God who says in the Quran that not even a leaf falls without his knowledge. This reduces God to an abstract principle, not a living, aware creator. Problem number 3. No physical resurrection. Aristotelian philosophy had no room for bodily resurrection. Maybe the soul continues in some abstract way, but your physical body? Nah, that's done. But Islam clearly teaches that on the day of judgment, you'll be resurrected, body and soul. You'll stand before God in your complete form. These philosophers were pushing human reason too far. They were making logic seem more powerful than it really is. They were reducing God to fit inside human understanding. Al-Ghazali did not say reason is useless. What he said was far more unsettling. He argued that reason has limitations, and when it crosses those limits, it produces conclusions that sound logical but are actually false. Aristotle's system, in Al-Ghazali's view, made human logic seem more powerful than it truly is. It reduced God's direct involvement in the world, and it tried to explain divine matters using assumptions drawn from the created world. In other words, philosophy began speaking about God as if God were just another object of study. For Al-Ghazali, that was the fundamental mistake. This is something I personally reflect on a lot. Trying to understand God through philosophy alone feels like trying to understand the world by looking through a small hole in a bottle. You may see something. You may see patterns, movement, even beauty, but you cannot see everything. Yet we often act as though that small view gives us the full picture. Al-Ghazali's point is that human reason looks through a very narrow opening. It is useful, yes, but incomplete. When philosophers forget this, they begin mistaking partial vision for absolute truth. Aristotle gives us structure. Al-Ghazali gives us humility. Aristotle asks, what must be true logically? Al-Ghazali asks, what are the limits of logic itself? For Al-Ghazali, God is not bound by the rules we observe in creation. Causality, time, necessity. These are features of the world, not constraints placed on the Creator. Trying to force God into philosophical categories does not elevate human understanding. It shrinks the divine to fit the human mind. That is why Al-Ghazali considered some philosophical conclusions not just mistaken, but spiritually dangerous. These philosophers were pushing human reason too far. They were making logic seem more powerful than it really is. They were reducing God to fit inside human understanding, and in the process, they were contradicting fundamental Islamic beliefs. Al-Ghazali wasn't anti-reason. He was a brilliant logician himself. But he said reason has its domain: the natural world, mathematics, observable phenomena. When you're measuring the distance to the moon or calculating mathematical proofs, reason is your tool. But when you're trying to understand God, that's where reason hits its limit.
So if blind faith wasn't the answer, and dry philosophy was a dead end, what was Al-Ghazali's superior path? He called it Ilm al-Yaqin, the knowledge of certainty. It wasn't about rejecting reason, but about placing it in its proper station. Think of it like this. Your eyes, reason, are fantastic for navigating the physical world, but they are useless for tasting honey or feeling love. For that, you need different faculties. Al-Ghazali elevated the heart, qalb, as the organ of spiritual perception. True knowledge of the divine isn't just intellectual assent, it's a transformative taste, a direct experience achieved through spiritual purification, devotion, and moral practice. Logic can point the way, but only the heart can arrive. This is why his later great work is called The Revival of the Religious Sciences. He sought to revive a complete way of knowing where law, theology, philosophy work together to produce a human being who knows God with every fiber of their being. In Aristotelian thought, filtered through Muslim philosophers, God becomes this distant, abstract, unmoved mover, a cosmic first cause who set things in motion and then stepped back. The universe runs on automatic according to natural laws. But Al-Ghazali's God? Active, involved, intimately aware of every detail. A God who can know you personally, who can intervene, who can resurrect the dead. This isn't a God limited by philosophical categories. This is the infinite creator described in Revelation. And this is crucial. Al-Ghazali is basically saying, look, we're finite beings. We live maybe 70, 80, 90 years. We see through 2 eyes, hear through 2 ears, think with a 3-pound brain. And we're trying to comprehend the infinite, the eternal, the creator of all existence? It's absurd when you think about it. It's like an ant trying to understand quantum physics. Not because the ant is stupid, ants are amazing, but because the ant's capacity is limited to its domain. You might think, this is an 800-year-old debate. Why should I care? Because we are living in a new age of Aristotle. Today, we have a different but equally powerful system: scientific materialism. Its rules are brilliant for explaining the how of the universe. But when we make its rules absolute and say, therefore there is no room for a creator, for consciousness, for a soul, or for divine interaction, we are making Al-Ghazali's philosopher's error all over again. We are using a magnificent tool for understanding creation to make pronouncements about the creator. Al-Ghazali teaches us intellectual humility. He teaches us that every system has its domain. The moment you use it to box in the infinite, you failed. His legacy is the balanced, humble seeker, one who uses reason to its limit, then opens the heart to what lies beyond. In a world torn between rigid fundamentalism and empty secularism, Al-Ghazali's path is a forgotten treasure.